How you doing, viewers? So for this video we are going to be looking at another kids and family genre film. Unfortunately, this one isn't liked by a lot of people or is well known, but that's my job to cover it, so we're gonna look at it. So if you're not ready, get ready. This is Inspector Gadget 2.
Looking back. In today's time, everyone knows Disney for owning some of the biggest franchises. Aside from working with Pixar, Disney is now the overseer of Marvel Studios and Lucasfilm. Those are just some major studio names, names which any executive would kill to get their hands on. However, getting up to this point, the Mouse House has gone through countless changes, struggles, and blunders. We all know that when Disney started, it was an immediate success after releasing Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in 1937. Sadly, when World War II came around, the studio did suffer from a loss of workforce and income, but none were as detrimental as the films released in the late 1970s and throughout most of the 1980s. These considered quote-unquote failures were movies like The Black Hole, Tron, Return to Oz, The Black Cauldron, and The Great Mouse Detective. Thankfully, over time, these productions have gained their own followings, because although they underperformed, there were things about them that people loved. Next came what is now called the Disney Renaissance, a time during the late 1980s and much of the 1990s where the studio made a slew of well-respected and praised films. Many of us know these to be our childhood, but for those who are not familiar, these consisted of The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Hercules, Mulan, and Tarzan, all of which critically and financially performed well at the box office. This particular time is fondly remembered by young and older viewers alike. But even with this, the Renaissance decade also had some questionable releases. These films in question were mainly live-action adaptations based on older cartoons from the 1980s and further back.
Oh yeah, we are going there. Get ready to revisit those movies you don't want to see again.
The live-action adaptations produced by Disney were Mr. Magoo, George of the Jungle, and Inspector Gadget, all of which had actors that had somewhat of a name for them already. Of this trio, only George of the Jungle would be the most successful, financially and critically, but even then, it didn't receive the greatest of praise. Mr. Magoo, however, was hated by many for its lack of anything clever and its insult to people with eyesight problems. Inspector Gadget proved itself to be another critical flop by ignoring a large portion of its roots and adding in a ton of inappropriate humor that just didn't fit the kids and family genre. Really though, what Disney executive approved to use crotch shots and ogling monkey sounds at butts? Yet the movie went on to make money despite its critical panning and almost completely killing Matthew Broderick's acting career.
No! I gotta get out of here.
Well, my guess is that's what he said when he learned they were making a sequel. However, Disney was not done with Mechanical Detective.
Really, you don't say? Like no crap.
Like the studio had done in the past, for any theatrical film they released that ended up performing decently on opening weekend, they ended up making a direct-to-DVD sequel of it, and thus giving us the release that many people did not ask for, Inspector Gadget 2 in 2003.
So why exactly are we going through this again? I mean, if it's not that great? Well, in order for you to understand, let me break it down for you. Because believe it or not, this movie actually has some redeeming qualities compared to the first movie.
Overall plot and writing. The blunders to the original Inspector Gadget live-action film were quite obvious. The product was a culmination of poor storytelling, substance, and comedy. It was directed by David Kellogg, the director of Cool as Ice, which we all know how that went, and had two writers attached, one of which was Zach Penn, the writer to the various comic book films like X-Men 2, The Incredible Hulk, and The Avengers. He was also the writer for the unpopular Elektra solo film and the less enjoyed X-Men The Last Stand. With hits and misses like that, it's weird how the adaptation of the cartoon wasn't at least halfway decent.
So since Zach Penn is an adapter of comic books to the film medium, how hard could it be to actually adapt a cartoon to a movie if they're both in the same medium?
For this sequel, the direction was headed by Alex Zamm, a TV director who has now made several what many people consider unwanted direct-to-DVD sequels, Like Dr. Dolittle 5. Wait, what? 5? Really? 5? This series is already close to making 2 trilogies? How popular is this franchise? I don't know what to say about that. So he's made Dr. Dolittle $5 million mutts, and The Tooth Fairy 2, and Jingle All the Way 2, starring Mater from Cars, also known as Larry the Cable Guy. His only other theatrical credit belongs to Chairman of the Board in 1998, starring Carrot Top.
Yeah, and we all know how popular Carrot Top is currently right now. Just saying.
Instead of Zach Penn returning to do the sequel, the script was now written by director Alex Zamm and 2 other writers who don't have much credibility to their names. The story introduces Inspector Gadget, now played by French Stewart, once again doing the usual of looking to do his town a service, but always finds one way or another to mess up a simple task because of his gadget glitches. After frustrating the chief for the final time, Gadget ends up being replaced with a new upgrade counterpart named G2, played by Elaine Hendricks. Ah, I see now. G2 as the character, but also like the title in the sequel somewhat. Get it? Get it? All the while, the evil Dr. Claw, played by Tony Martin, is up to no good by plotting to take over the city by creating a deadly weapon that'll assist him in his plans. However, not everybody's in the dark, because Gadget's niece, Penny, played by Caitlin Wax, knows something is up and is determined to find out what. The story is by no means original in any way, nor is the setup, but for as much as it is mediocre, it is a definite improvement over the original. In all honesty, it feels closer to the Inspector Gadget cartoon episode than the first one ever did for a couple reasons. First and foremost, the overall execution of the film feels more cartoony than its predecessor. The first felt like it tried to be grounded, but ended up being upstaged by all the camp around it. Here it feels like the cast fully accepted that and went with it. Another plus is actually treating the characters like the cartoon. By this, we look at the curious case of Dr. Claw, and how he was adapted. For the first film, many fans called BS once it was revealed that Dr. Claw displayed his face to the public, played by Rupert Everett. In this production, Tony Martin's face is never seen, or at least not fully. His face is always kept in the shadows. If that's not following source material, I don't know what is. Then again, Dr. Claw is also pretty mobile compared to his cartoon source, but hey, it's a start. With this though, the script does have its problems. For those who love continuity, there's nothing stated about what happened to Jolie Fisher's role as Brenda, Gadget's original love interest.
Or Robo-Brenda for that matter. Or even Inspector Gadget's headless counterpart. Continuity. Great job.
Then again, why must all heroes need a love interest? Gadget never had or needed one in his cartoon, so why now? Adding G2 into the mix, I guess, was a replacement for Brenda, but does anything really need to be said? It's clear as all day on the poster what G2 represents to Gadget. The comedy bits aren't much to laugh at either. It is, however, better than the original by not containing any inappropriate humor or immature content. Why do producers and studios think that that's what the audience want to see and enjoy? That kind of content does not match the demographic. Despite that critical improvement, the dialogue is formulaic and predictable. I'm sure Inspector Gadget fans are not expecting the greatest of scripted lines, but some decency is required. Actors and characters. Of all the actors cast for this production, the only person returning from the previous film was D.L. Hewley as the voice of the Gadgetmobile. My guess is now he's the official mascot of the series, of what very little there is of this franchise.
It's a Disney movie!
Oh, okay. I forgot.
As mentioned before, French Stewart has replaced Broderick as the inspector, and for the most part, he portrays himself as the better fit. This is not only in physical form, but in his voice too.
Stop in the name of the...
Whoa, that went well.
Although Don Adams will always be the original voice of Gadget, Stewart isn't far off from being a possible stand-in. Better that than Broderick sounding nowhere close. Stewart was also best known for his role in the hit TV series Third Rock from the Sun, and also voiced various cartoon characters like Icarus from Hercules the Animated Series, and Buzz Lightyear Star Command as Rent Whistleswack. He also had a small role in the cult sci-fi hit Stargate. Caitlin Wax, who replaces Michelle Trachtenberg as Penny, is okay in her role, but doesn't stand out any more than from before. But like the cartoon, she is the one who mainly indirectly helps Uncle Gadget solve his cases.
What's this? A patent number. Aha.
Her latest credit is from the Hungover Games in 2014. Yeah, it's not a Friedberg and Seltzer film, but it's probably not far from that territory. For Elaine Hendricks as G2, she's only there for obvious reasons. And she tries, but it's brought down from just how contrived the role is. Her best-known role goes back to the Lindsay Lohan film, The Parent Trap.
I never need backup. And until we find out what Claw needs the fuel cells for, all of Riverton is at risk.
As for the role of Claw, although his identity is mostly concealed, Tony Martin isn't all that convincing, and that's more or less just because his voice isn't deep enough. Was the vocal enhancement in post-production that time-consuming or that expensive?
Dr. Claw, this place is a dump. What happened to your multi-million-dollar high-rise evil headquarters?
What do you think happened to it? When Gadget arrested me, the police confiscated all my assets.
Even better, I mean, Frank Welker could have just dubbed over the lines since he is the original Claw anyway. So the problem is where?
This technique of dubbing over lines was also done for Darth Vader in Star Wars.
Know what you're talking about. I'm a member of the Imperial Senate on a diplomatic mission.
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away.
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a member of the Imperial Senate on a diplomatic mission to Alderaan.
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away.
And it's not like they couldn't think of this solution because they have voice actor Jeff Bennett in a small role, and that wasn't even necessary.
She tried to tell me, and I didn't listen to her.
Speaking of listening, I'm getting a little tired of liver-flavored kibble all the time. Would it kill you to shell out for a pork roast or a little prime rib?
Personally, though, I do miss Rupert Everett as Claw. He had such a doofy face in half of his scenes. Seriously, who makes that kind of face? The side characters like Chief Quimby, played by Mark Mitchell, aren't much to talk about, and one of Dr. Claw's henchmen named McKibble, portrayed by John Batchelor, just looks strange. Almost like a real version of a Garbage Pail Kid.
One sugar or two?
Even Bruce Spence has a role to play, and that's Gadget's new scientific overseer and modifications, like Brenda. It's not a demeaning role, but it is a wasteful one.
Let's see how your physiobiometric bevel fetzer is functioning. Oh, diagnostics check out fine. What seems to be the problem, Gadget?
Baxter, I'm still having gadgets with my glitches. I mean, glitches with my gadgets. I'm all messed up.
Sorry, Gadget, I don't see what the problem is.
Action and cinematography. Even with a mediocre script, this direct-to-DVD release does manage to pull off decent-looking effects for the budget that it had. A report of an estimated $12 million went into the budget of this production. A good portion of this, is safe to say, went into the special and practical effects. This usually is incorporated either for the comedy or action sequences. The realer aspects in the movie would obviously be due to the practical effects, and the special effects, on the other hand, are obviously not going to be as polished as the ones in the parent film, since it had a budget of $90 million. This, unfortunately, does lead to some scenes where the special effects being discussed stands out among the surroundings, as if it was just pasted into the scene shot for shot. Yeah, it's not great, but this is the least of this movie's problems. As the director of photography, Jeffrey Wharton's skill was adequate for most shots, especially when it came to concealing any practical effects or Dr. Claw's face. Only sometimes will an establishing shot seem like it's giving the audience too much where the background feels more like a soundstage. Yes, because I'm not aware that this scene really isn't in a warehouse.
No.
Besides this, though, there are no facial zoom-ins or strange angles, and that's commendable since most of his credits are more camera-operative positions. Nonetheless, Wharton has significant experience in being a third unit director of photography to both The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions. Soundtrack and film score. The task of scoring the music to this feature changed hands. What a surprise! Here, Chris Hagen is the new composer to Gadget's music. However, even with this change, Hagen manages to keep the goofy sound of the score that John Debney had created from the original movie. There actually isn't much variation among the tracks, but Heijin thankfully sticks to the catchy Inspector Gadget theme. Is there any track that really stands out other than the main theme? No. Strangely enough, for a direct-to-DVD release, there was a score released by MC Records with a total runtime extending over an hour. But the ability to actually find any kind of physical or electronic copy has been proven to be searching for the eighth wonder of the world. Either that or it's a bootleg. But so you can hear what I'm talking about, here's a little bit of like what the intro sounds like. Overall impressions. Was it a flub, or a job well done? Yeah, so both live-action versions of Inspector Gadget aren't that good, but it is a bit surprising that the DVD sequel to the original feels like a better adaptation to that of the cartoon. The writing may not be that special, and its continuity isn't that faithful, but there are components that are more sincere to the cartoon, and the inappropriate humor has been omitted. The special effects may look a bit fake at times, but remember its budget was only like 13% of its predecessor's budget. French Stewart is also a much better fit in the role of Gadget, and the music is thankfully the same.
Yeah, so Inspector Gadget 2. All in all, it's not the greatest film, but it is better than the original, so if you want to compare which is the lesser evil, you can go with number 2.
Be careful in there. That toilet's got quite a flush.